In the summer of 1970, an 18-year-old boy and girl sat side by side on a park bench, both freshly graduated from high school, excitedly discussing their upcoming adventure of going to the countryside. They had both been assigned to the same youth work team and would be leaving in 2 days. Han Rui, this is our family's heirloom necklace. My mother knows about us and has asked me to give it to you, hoping that after we return to the city, you'll wear it when you marry into our family. Lian said, speaking seriously to Han Rui. Okay, I hope we will never betray each other. Han Rui took the necklace, lowering her head in embarrassment, yet her words were firm. May 3rd, 2006. At the age of 27, Su Zihan placed his family's heirloom necklace around his girlfriend Li Niansong's neck in front of his father, Su Kui. As he watched the young couple in front of him, the smile on his face was a reflection of his inner joy, and tears of happiness welled up in the corners of his eyes. On August 7th, 2006, something strange happened in Lingnan village, Qianling Group. Su Kui, 56 years old, suddenly died at home. When people found him, he had already passed away. The villagers quickly reported the death to the police. A death in the village was a big deal, and there was much debate over whether it was suicide or murder. The police immediately conducted a thorough investigation. After testing the cup of water next to Su Kui, they found traces of rat poison. The only fingerprints on the cup belonged to Su Kui, and there were no signs of a struggle in the house. If someone had poisoned Su Kui, there was no solid evidence. If it were a suicide, there was no suicide note or any indication of depression. While notifying Su Kui's son to return home, the police began extensive interviews and investigations. When villagers spoke of Su Kui, they described him as a kind and honest man. If he didn't have a kind heart, how could he have adopted an abandoned baby 27 years ago? The two of them had relied on each other for so many years. With Su Kui's passing, no one knew how his son would cope. Some villagers mentioned that Su Kui had a difficult life, raising his son alone and playing both father and mother. In his younger years, Su Kui had been a handsome and dashing man. Compared to others born in 1950 in the village, he had aged prematurely. The youthful spirit he had as a small team leader had long faded away, replaced by the weariness of life. He had nearly reached the age to enjoy his son's success when this tragedy occurred. It was indeed a pitiable situation. When the police asked the villagers about Su Kui's personal life, many shook their heads and sighed. In his youth, Su Kui had been the most outstanding young man in the village. At 24, he became the team leader. With his handsome looks and tall stature, he had been the dream of many young women in nearby villages. Yet, he had never shown interest in them, preferring not to settle down with these rural women. Over time, he remained single until he was 29 years old. At that time, while walking on the dirt road in the back mountains, Su Kui found an abandoned baby. As the team leader, it wasn't unusual for him to encounter such things while patrolling the area. Kind-hearted Su Kui took the baby to families with young children, asking if anyone could nurse the child, and also inquiring if anyone would adopt him. But in that era, the villagers themselves were struggling, and few could afford to take in a child, especially a boy with an unknown background. With no one willing to take in the baby, Su Kui ended up raising him himself, naming the child Su Zihan. When Su Kui was 32, he married a woman from another town who had fallen on hard times. They had a brief period of happiness, but it wasn't long before rumors surfaced that his wife was mistreating Su Zihan. Behind Su Kui's back, she would deny the 3-year-old boy food, especially after she became pregnant. The couple fought frequently because of this. Neighbors clearly remembered one night when they heard the sounds of an argument escalating into violence, and they could also hear Su Zihan crying. Then there was the sound of a door slamming. "This life is unbearable. You and your dear son can live together," were the woman's final words before leaving. She was 4 months pregnant at the time and disappeared without a trace. Su Kui was devastated. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, sometimes crying and laughing as he held Su Zihan. From then on, Sukue never sought another marriage. He devoted himself entirely to raising his adopted son, bringing him up to adulthood. Su Zihan, now 27 years old, works as a translator at a foreign trade company in Yangcheng and is a true member of the white-collar class. When Su Zihan entered the police station, many officers were surprised. What a handsome, sunny young man. If they hadn't previously investigated his background and learned that he was adopted, they would have assumed he came from a scholarly family. His demeanor exuded a natural calmness, and there was an indescribable elegance in his being. Upon hearing the police suggest that his adoptive father might have committed suicide, Su Zihan quickly shook his head, vehemently disagreeing with the conclusion. "Officer, my father absolutely did not commit suicide. We've made it through the hardest times, and now our lives are stable. Just recently, I brought my girlfriend to see him. I could see the joy in his eyes. He was looking forward to me getting married and having children. His wish to become a grandfather wasn't something new. He would never have committed suicide for no reason." Su Zihan's voice trembled with emotion, and his eyes were misty as he spoke of his father. "We're not saying that your adoptive father committed suicide without reason," one officer responded gently. "Please accept our condolences and help us provide any useful clues." From Su Zihan's recollection, after separating from his wife of only 1 year, Sukue never remarried. He devoted himself entirely to raising his adopted son. In Su Zihan's memory, Sukue treated him better than any biological father. He believed that no other father in the entire village could have been better to his child. When Su Zihan was in elementary school, he always had a warm meal in the morning. His lunchbox was always filled with the best food. When he went to a school farther from home, Sukue spent money to buy him a bicycle, which made many of his classmates envious. During high school, when he boarded at school, Sukue was the parent who gave him the most pocket money. Su Zihan knew that his father had sacrificed much to raise him, including his own happiness and marriage. Since he was a young child, Su Zihan had made up his mind to repay his father's kindness. He wanted to ensure that his father had a happy, fulfilling, and peaceful old age. But now, the shocking tragedy, his father had passed away so suddenly, without warning. Su Zihan had never had the chance to repay the kindness of the man who had raised him, and the thought of it overwhelmed him with sorrow. The police had thoroughly investigated Sukue's death, but there was no breakthrough. Then, a young female officer, who had only recently joined the force, made a statement that stunned everyone. Sukue treated Su Zihan so well. Could he be his biological son? She said. "I accidentally saw an old photo of Sukue, and I think they resemble each other by about 60%. Otherwise, how could such a big man be so kind to an abandoned baby? I've never seen a living saint like him." An older officer scoffed. "You're too inexperienced. There are plenty of people with great love in this world. Don't be so sentimental." The young female officer, unwilling to back down, retorted, "Then why did he die? If it wasn't for some shameful secret being discovered, wouldn't he be living happily now, especially with such a wonderful son who is about to get married? Why would he commit suicide? If it was murder, why would someone kill him? He must have done something wrong." The criminal police team leader intervened, stopping the argument. "We can't jump to conclusions based on speculation. We need to base everything on the facts. This case is indeed strange, but we have to start from the recent events. Since there are no obvious leads, we will investigate step by step. There will always be a clue left behind." The owner of a small shop in Lingnan village called the police station, reporting an important piece of information. 2 officers from the criminal team quickly arrived at the shop. "Officer, I opened the shop this morning and Zhang Dalan came to buy something. Normally, he'd try to get some food on credit, but this time, he bought a lot of items. I was curious about where he got the money, and then he pulled out a shiny gold necklace from his pocket. I didn't dare take it." The shopkeeper then asked Zhang Daling about it. It turned out he had found the necklace behind Su Kuei's house. "When I saw the police asking for clues, I immediately called you. Thank you for your support. Can you take us to meet Zhang Daling?" one officer asked with interest. The shopkeeper eagerly led the officers to Zhang Dalong and introduced him. Zhang Dalong was a local in his 60s, mentally disabled, and with the intellectual ability of a small child. His parents had passed away long ago, and he survived on government assistance and the help of kind villagers. Zhang Dalong, let me see what you've got in your pocket and I'll buy you some food, one of the officers said, pulling out 200 yuan bills. Zhang Dalong, though intellectually disabled, recognized money. He took the cash and handed over the necklace. The officer placed the necklace in an evidence bag and began questioning Zhang Dalong. Following the officer's instructions, Zhang Dalong led them to the police cordon surrounding Su Kuei's house, where the officers pieced together the events from his incoherent words. Zhang Dalong had been curious about the police cordon and wandered into the yard. The necklace was lying in a crack behind the house. While eating a steamed bun, Zhang Dalong had accidentally dropped it on the ground, and when he bent down to pick it up, he noticed something shiny. He moved some hay and retrieved the necklace. The officers speculated, if the necklace wasn't Su Kuei's, it could have been dropped by the person who had been at the scene, most likely the perpetrator. The necklace was definitely a significant clue. The police once again approached Su Zihan to ask about any valuable possessions at home, wondering if Su Kuei might have been involved in a financial dispute that could have led to the murder. As the saying goes, no one insults without reason, and no fight is without cause. Perhaps a financial conflict had escalated into a deadly incident. Su Zihan disagreed with this theory. His family didn't have much wealth. The only savings were under his own control, and Su Kuei had only small amounts of pocket money. Su Kuei didn't have any bad habits and had never associated with dangerous people. We've already told you there are no valuable items in the house. The only valuable thing is the heirloom necklace my mother gave me, which I gave to my girlfriend. When the police heard about the necklace, their eyes lit up. After carefully questioning Su Zihan about the necklace's characteristics, they began to connect the dots. Su Zihan's girlfriend, Li Niansong, is 26 years old and works as the sales department manager at a trading company. The two met at a friend's birthday party, and their love at first sight wasn't just a coincidence. It's the best example of how two people can be irresistibly drawn to each other and gradually fall in love. Both were deeply attracted to each other and grateful to have found the perfect partner in life. After dating for 6 months, they officially confirmed their relationship. During the May Day holiday, Li Niansong visited Su Zihan's home. Su Kuei, his adoptive father, was thrilled and very pleased with his future daughter-in-law. In front of his father, Su Zihan gave Li Niansong the family heirloom necklace his biological mother had left him. Su Kuei even suggested that, when they had the chance, the two families should meet and discuss wedding plans. When Li Niansong returned home, she eagerly told her parents about the visit to the Su family and proudly showed them the necklace around her neck. Her mother, Li Mama, praised how beautiful it was, but her father, Li En, froze in place when he saw it, unable to recover for a while. Your father really is something. He's never seen anything valuable, and now he's stunned, Li Mama joked with her daughter. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Can I take it off and let Dad take a good look at it? Lian asked, his voice clearly excited. Sure, you can take a good look, Dad. I'm fine with it, Li Niansong said cheerfully. Such a strange man. What's the big deal about a necklace? It's a symbol of love. How could she bear to take it off? Li Mama teased. Mom, come on, it's fine. It's rare that Dad's interested in something. I've never seen him so focused on anything in years. Lian took the necklace to his bedroom and stood by the window, examining it under the brightest light. His hands trembled slightly as he occasionally wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The necklace featured a heart-shaped pendant with an intricate design that could open and close. Inside the pendant was an image of a bud about to bloom. The bud symbolized Han Rui, and the most remarkable detail was that the leaves of the flower subtly formed the initials HL, the first letters of Han and Li. This was a piece Li and had carefully commissioned from a microartist as a token of love for Han Rui. Seeing the necklace with such special meaning, Lien could no longer control his overwhelming emotions. He covered his face with his hands and silently began to sob. Li Mama, who had entered the room, was stunned. Even if it was hard to let their daughter go, this wasn't how she imagined her husband would behave. What had caused him to react so emotionally? "Do you know whose necklace this is?" Lien asked his wife. "Isn't this Su Kuei's family heirloom?" Li Mama asked, puzzled. "No, this is our Li family's heirloom. It's the love token I gave Han Rui many years ago." Li Mama was taken aback. Could it be that her son-in-law was Han Rui's son? But Han Rui had been out of touch for years. How had she suddenly become her in-law? But wait, Li Mama recalled that her daughter hadn't mentioned meeting Su Zihan's biological mother during her visits to the Su family. After confirming with their daughter, Li En and his wife learned that Su Zihan was actually Su Kuei's adopted son. He had never met his biological mother, and the necklace was a keepsake from her that Su Kuei had been keeping all these years. From what their daughter had told them about Su Kuei's past, Lien was certain that Su Kuei was none other than Su Erming, the former captain of the Lingnan District's Front Ridge team. Back then, people referred to him by his nickname, and his full name, Su Kuei, had nearly been forgotten. Lien felt overwhelmed. Many years ago, Han Rui had suddenly left a farewell letter and disappeared without a trace. Looking at Su Zihan's age, if he were truly Han Rui's biological son, it meant that Han Rui must have remarried after leaving. However, Han Rui's parents had only received a letter from her and knew nothing about what had happened to her after that. Li En pondered over the situation, but he still couldn't figure it out until his wife said something that sparked a realization. Since Han Rui kept the necklace and didn't even change the marks on the pendant, it means she never stopped loving you, Li Mama said after thinking it over for several days. After all, Han Rui had been her husband's ex-girlfriend. Are you saying Han Rui didn't change her feelings? Then why did she write that breakup letter, and why has there been no news from her since? If she hadn't left on her own, could it be that? Li En began. Could she have had no choice? Could she have been coerced or even kidnapped? Li Mama wondered, recalling all those TV drama plots. Who would kidnap her and why? If she were kidnapped, what would she do? Lien asked. Of course, she would try to call for help. But kidnappers usually keep their victims silent. She would have tried to leave some clue behind. Yes, she must have wanted to leave a clue, Li Mama insisted. Suddenly, Lien stood up. He walked over to the study door, climbed onto a long bench, and took an old cardboard box from the top of the bookshelf. After wiping off the dust, he rummaged through it and found an old-fashioned diary. Inside the diary, there was a perfectly folded letter, Han Rui's breakup letter from all those years ago. Lien had kept the letter all these years, intending to one day confront Han Rui and ask her directly about her conflicting feelings. He had imagined tearing the letter into pieces and throwing them in her face, spitting on it to vent his frustration. But now, more than 20 years later, he was rereading it, not for the sake of revenge, but in search of any clues. The letter read, Dear Lien, I've thought about it for a long time, and I no longer love you. I often feel overwhelmed by your domineering attitude, which exhausts me both physically and emotionally. I think we no longer have any fate together. I often wake up suddenly in the middle of the night, feeling like a prisoner. Being forced to stay by your side does no good for either of us. It would be better if we both go our separate ways and cherish the good memories we had. I've always dreamed of a life of freedom and clarity, far from the noise of the world. I'll leave and live far away from your world. I won't hate you. No one is anyone's savior, and we all need to take care of ourselves. I value words, so please take a moment to think carefully about what I've written and understand my intentions. I hope we both find happiness in the end. Goodbye. Han Rui, written on November 5th, 1978. The letter was written with a fountain pen on ordinary stationery. When Lien had first read it, he was too angry and dizzy to make sense of the words. Now, as he carefully studied it, he realized that there was more to it than he had noticed before. The heavy ink strokes seemed as though they had been rewritten. When he connected the letters, Li En froze. "I am trapped in a cave by Sue Erming. Please save me." This was not a breakup letter at all. It was a cry for help. But Li En, 28 years later, had only just figured this out. He slammed his hands against his head in frustration. He hated himself, hated his narrow-mindedness, selfishness, and stupidity. He hated that he had been so easily deceived by appearances and had failed to protect the woman he had loved. How could he still face the world after failing her like this? After the initial despair, Li En regained his composure. After all, he was a 54-year-old man now. He couldn't act impulsively like a young man. This event had occurred 28 years ago, and Han Rui's whereabouts were still unknown. With just this letter as evidence, it was not enough to solve the mystery. Li En went to visit Han Rui's elderly parents, who were both over 70 years old. Han Rui's mother, heartbroken by the disappearance of her daughter, had tears streaming down her face, though her sight was nearly gone. According to Han Rui's father, after receiving the letter, he had been so angry that he tore it up on the spot and never bothered to investigate it further. After that, Han Rui disappeared without a trace. To him, Han Rui was no longer a daughter, and he hadn't thought about her for years. Even now, when the topic came up, Han Rui's father would tremble with rage, his beard and eyebrows shaking. Li En left Han Rui's family with nothing new. Seeing her husband's troubled expression, Li Mama volunteered to investigate further. Since the villagers in Qianling had no idea who she was, she could gather information without being noticed. Li En, grateful for his wife's selflessness, felt deeply moved. Li Mama disguised herself as a saleswoman for a health product company. She carried a large amount of goods with her, visiting door to door in the Qianling area to conduct market research and promote her products. She stayed with local families, chatting with the women while pretending to be friendly and casual. Li Mama was quite resourceful. She managed to learn a lot of private details about Su Kuei, including one story that the villagers often talked about. The Su family's ancestral tomb was located in a cave in the back mountain. Many years ago, Su Kuei's great-grandfather went hunting in the mountains and accidentally entered the cave, only to be devoured by a pack of wolves. At the time, the Su family was quite wealthy, with dozens of people armed with rifles who wiped out the wolves. They then buried Su Laoye's, the great-grandfather's, remains in the cave, and from that moment, the cave became the Su family's ancestral tomb. Outsiders avoided it, believing it to be unlucky. When Li En heard this, his mind immediately jumped to the possibility that the cave where Han Rui had been imprisoned might be the same one as the Su family's ancestral tomb. One silent, dark night, Li En and his wife set out with flashlights and small spades to visit the Su family tomb in the remote cave. The cave was long and spacious, and deep inside, they discovered a small door. Upon opening it, they found a square stone room. The stone walls were marked with obvious nail marks, and inside the room were a bed, a table, and some stools, almost like a guard's duty room for the tomb. The couple bravely explored the entire cave. They noticed over a dozen raised mounds, which were clearly graves. Each grave had a stone tablet with the name of the deceased. However, one grave was set apart from the others. The stone tablet in front of it was peculiar, inscribed with only 4 characters, "The grave of my beloved wife," making it stand out from the rest. Determined to uncover the truth, Li En and his wife carefully began to dig up the grave. When they pried open the coffin, they found only a set of stark white bones. Li En didn't feel any fear. Instead, he took a finger bone and put it in his pocket, along with a jade bracelet from the wrist. Although neither of them was skilled in identifying gender from bones, they both had an overwhelming sense that this was Han Rui's body, guided only by instinct. After restoring the grave as it was, they spent the entire night working, and as dawn approached, they returned home to strategize. How could they make Su Kuei confess and reveal the crimes he had committed? While they both felt certain that Su Kuei had caused Han Rui's death, they had no solid evidence. If they went to the police now, It was unlikely they would take the case seriously after so many years. A careful plan was needed. Lee Mama once again visited Su Kuei, this time under the guise of selling health products. As dinner time approached, she made it clear she had no intention of leaving. Su Kuei politely insisted she didn't have to stay, but Lee Mama insisted on staying for dinner. She even went out to buy plenty of dishes and invited a neighbor to join the meal. After dinner, the guests gradually dispersed. Su Kuei, who had consumed only 2 cups of alcohol, barely enough to affect him, was still feeling dizzy. He was soon lulled into a stupor and fell into a deep sleep. Suddenly, a woman's cry woke him up. Dazed, he looked toward the outer room, and there, a woman was crying. "Su Kuei, you've ruined my life. Why did you treat me this way?" Su Kuei froze, his mind racing. The woman, dressed in white, had long hair covering her face. Her voice, was it familiar? It was Han Rue's voice. The woman slowly reached out her hands, and there, on her wrist, was the jade bracelet Su Kuei had once placed on Han Rue's arm. Looking closer, she was wearing the family heirloom necklace Han Rue had always worn. Could it be? Had Han Rue returned from the dead? No, that wasn't possible. Han Rue had been dead for over 20 years. This had to be her ghost. Han Rue, I always loved you. I was sincere with you. When you hemorrhaged after giving birth, I couldn't do anything. Please forgive me. Please just come back to me, Su Kuei pleaded. You forced me to write that breakup letter. You kept me in the dark. When will you repay the debt you owe me? The woman, the ghost, responded. If I didn't do that, how could you ever forget Lien? I only took such extreme measures because I loved you. I owe you so much. You were never alone. I was there with you. Now our son has grown up, and there's nothing left for me in this world. I just want to be with you again. Take me with you, Su Kuei said, walking slowly toward the ghost. As he reached out to grab her sleeve, the ghost hesitated for a moment. In that instant, Su Kuei pulled the ghost into his arms, whispering of his endless longing for her. The ghost struggled to break free, and in the struggle, the necklace around her neck was torn off. In a flash, she sped out the door. Su Kuei stumbled after her, but by the time he reached the back of the house, the ghost had vanished. Seeing the woman he had longed for slip away once more, Su Kuei howled in anguish before finally collapsing, exhausted, on the ground outside. After a long, exhausting night, Lee Mama lay on the bed, tired out. Lee untook the recorder his wife handed him. Though there was some static, the recording was still clear. Darling, you've worked so hard. If I were on my own, I wouldn't have known what to do. I never would have gotten the evidence so quickly, Lien said, sincerely thanking his wife. I'm Han Rue's good friend. How could I ignore her unjust death? I'm about the same height as her, and I can mimic her voice well. The real credit goes to the sleeping pills I gave Su Kuei, plus the jade bracelet and the necklace. He'd be hard-pressed to deny it, Lee Mama replied, but then suddenly touched her neck. Oh no, the necklace is gone. What now? We'll deal with the necklace later, Lien said. Tomorrow I'll make a few more copies of the recording, and then I'll confront Su Kuei directly. Let's see how he tries to deny it. We've come this far, so we have to follow through. The next morning, Su Kuei woke up, rubbing his swollen eyes. He wondered why he had fallen asleep outside. The strange dream he had was still fresh in his mind. This was the first time in years that he had dreamed of Han Rue, who had been dead for so long. Back inside his house, just as he sat down, Su Kuei was startled by a familiar face walking in. Was it him? His eyes must be playing tricks on him. Captain Su, don't you recognize me? I'm Lien, the educated youth who was with Han Rue. Seeing me must make you uncomfortable, right? Lien said with a calm expression. That's not true, Su Kuei replied, trying to cover his confusion. I haven't seen you in so long. I couldn't remember right away. No amount of time can erase your crimes. Don't you know the law of karma? Do you still think you can hide your actions from more than 20 years ago? Lien said, turning on the recorder. Su Kuei's voice clearly came through. Li En then placed the jade bracelet on the table. Su Kuei didn't show the fear that Li En had expected. In fact, he seemed to have anticipated this moment. He straightened up and gestured for Li En to sit down. Then he began recounting the events from that time. In 1970, Su Kuei, who was then the vice captain of the Front Ridge team, had been the one to welcome the educated youths to the village. At the age of 20, Su Kuei was full of energy and optimism. He was eager for both work and life, looking forward to the future. Among the group of young people, Su Kuei, with his tall, handsome stature, stood out. He easily befriended them, and soon enough, the villagers started calling him Su Ermeng, the captain. His leadership skills made him well-liked, and he quickly became familiar with everyone. However, his gaze often lingered on the 18-year-old Han Rui. She was a graceful, beautiful young woman, but unfortunately, she had a devoted boyfriend, Li En, who was always by her side. In Su Kuei's mind, Han Rui was his dream woman, his goddess. Taking advantage of his work opportunities, he tried to increase his interactions with her. The more he got to know her, the harder it became to let go, and the more his desire for her grew. This vicious cycle began to turn into a nightmare for Su Kuei. As he struggled with his emotions, his attitude began to shift. By the time he was 24, Su Kuei had become the captain of the Front Ridge team, hoping that his new position would make Han Rui see him in a new light. But to his dismay, Han Rui's respect for him was purely professional, with no emotional attachment. Su Kuei quietly prepared for the long game, knowing that many of the female, educated youths had married local farmers, and he believed his time would come. As 1978 arrived, the wave of educated youth returning to the cities became inevitable. Su Kuei, now 28, had refused numerous marriage proposals. He was alone, and though the villagers didn't understand, only he knew what he truly wanted. Every day, he saw Han Rui and Li En being affectionate, and a deep resentment began to build in him. With the year drawing to a close, Su Kuei realized his time was running out. He secretly began planning his next move. Fate gave Su Kuei a chance. He was tasked with picking up the educated youth return to city application forms for the team leader. He secretly kept one for himself, knowing how precious these forms were. The return to city process was done in batches, and everyone wanted to secure a form to determine their fate. Su Kuei saw his opportunity and secretly told Han Rui about the form. Han Rui had originally hoped to change the course of her and Lian's fate as soon as possible. At 26, both of their families were pushing for them to get married quickly, but the news about returning to the city had not come yet. Both families were growing anxious. To speed things up, Lian took a day off and went back to the city to ask around, hoping to find someone who could help. But just then, Su Kuei sent her word that he had managed to get the application form. He mysteriously told her that it had to remain a secret and invited her to come to his house in the evening to fill out the form. He promised to secretly report it to the commune. Han Rui had her doubts, but since Lian was not around to discuss it with her, and if Lian didn't find any help in the city, or if he could only get one spot, missing this chance would be a real shame. Han Rui also knew what Su Kuei wanted from her, but after weighing the pros and cons, she agreed to go to his house in the evening. Han Rui was still naive. She thought Su Kuei couldn't be that bad, especially since she had visited the Su family before with the other educated youths and found them to be kind and decent people. When Han Rui entered Su Kuei's house, she noticed something was off. Su Kuei told her his parents had gone to visit his older brother and sister in another town, so he was home alone. Noticing the hesitation in Han Rui's eyes, Su Kuei quickly brought out a form. The sight of it made Han Rui's heart leap with joy. This was exactly what she had been hoping for. All her earlier concerns disappeared. Su Kuei placed the table on the Kong and brought out his usual pen. Han Rui filled out the form with great care. Su Kuei brought 2 glasses of water and handed one to Han Rui. Feeling dry and thirsty, Han Rui drank the entire glass in one go. But before she could finish the form, she lost consciousness. When Han Rui woke up, she realized she had entered hell. Her feet were chained to the stone wall of a cave, Her hands were bound behind her back, and her mouth was sealed with tape. Seeing her disheveled clothes, Han-rue knew what Soo-kue had done to her. Driven by the instinct to survive, she quickly began thinking of ways to escape. To stop the educated youths and the villagers from investigating Han-rue's disappearance, Soo-kue forced her to write a letter saying she had gone to another place to seek a living, and another one to Li-en, breaking up with him. Han-rue cleverly included a distress signal in both letters, but no one understood. She remained trapped in Soo-kue's control. After being imprisoned for over a month, Han-rue began showing signs of pregnancy, such as vomiting. Soo-kue was overjoyed and treated her with even more tenderness, secretly buying baby supplies. By July 1979, Han-rue was about to give birth. Soo-kue, afraid to let her be seen, secretly studied childbirth and prepared for the delivery. Han-rue gently touched the necklace and pendant hanging from her chest. For the first time, she spoke softly to Soo-kue. "This necklace is something I bought from an antique market. It nearly cost me all my savings, but I really like it. No matter whether the baby is a boy or a girl, I want this necklace to be passed down as a family heirloom. If anything happens to me, I want you to promise me you'll raise the child well, even if I have to beg you." Hearing this, Soo-kue felt a chill run through him. "What are you talking about? You won't have any problems. I'll figure out a way to get you out in a few years, and we'll live happily together. Just bear with me for a while. You have to believe in me." Who could have known that Han-rue's words would come true? During childbirth, she suffered severe hemorrhaging. Soo-kue, terrified and helpless, watched as Han-rue grew colder and colder, crying uncontrollably. Han-rue passed away at the age of 27, and Soo-kue buried her in the cave where he had kept her imprisoned. At the age of 29, Soo-kue's heart was broken. He had truly loved Han-rue, but this selfish, domineering love had cost her life. When Soo-kue finished his recollection, Lian took out a new small recorder from his pocket. He pressed play, and Soo-kue's voice came through clearly. Soo-kue merely smiled helplessly. He wasn't afraid of the new evidence in Lian's hand. In fact, he felt a strange sense of relief. The guilt and torment that had plagued him for 27 years should finally come to an end. He calmly looked at Li-en and said, "I am guilty, I know that. I will be punished for it. You can rest assured. You don't need to waste your time collecting evidence. I will turn myself in voluntarily. I only ask that you keep it a secret from my son. I want him to grow up in an environment full of love and happiness. This is my final request as a father." After saying this, Soo-kue suddenly knelt before Lian. Lian, filled with rage, turned and left. Lian and his wife discussed the matter repeatedly, but in the end, they decided to respect Soo-kue's request. They kept all the evidence they had collected, waiting for Soo-kue to turn himself in to the police. However, instead of hearing about Soo-kue's confession, they received the news that Soo-kue had died at home. Only Lian and his wife knew the real reason why Soo-kue had committed suicide. With his death, they decided to let go of all the grudges and resentments. After all, life had to go on. But a few days later, the police came to the Li family's house for questioning because Li Miensong had told them that the necklace Su Zihan had given him was in Lian's possession. Lian had no choice but to lie, saying that he had accidentally lost the necklace and wasn't sure how to explain it to his daughter, so she remained unaware of the matter. This necklace was found in Soo-kue's yard. "If you don't tell us the truth, we'll consider you a suspect in the case." As of now, Soo-kue's case has not been definitively closed. "I think you understand the consequences of lying," the police said sternly, word by word. At this point, Lian had no choice but to confess everything: how he had found the necklace, how he had deduced the secret of the breakup letter, how he had secretly gone to Soo-kue's place to gather evidence, and he also provided the police with the recordings. The police took the case very seriously. Based on the evidence they had, it was clear that Soo-kue had committed suicide, likely out of fear of being caught. To clarify the events from 27 years ago, Forensic experts performed a paternity test between Han Rue's remains and Susie Han, as well as a DNA comparison between Han Rue's living parents and Susie Han. They also conducted a paternity test between Susie Han and Su Kuei. When the results came back, the police confirmed that the body buried in Su Kuei's family tomb cave was Han Rue's, and that Susie Han was Han Rue's biological son. However, Su Kuei was not Susie Han's biological father. The results shocked everyone. Susie Han resembled the young Su Kuei so much, but it turned out they were not father and son. It was truly strange. Some medical studies suggested that people's appearance could be influenced by imitation and diet, so perhaps this explained why Susie Han looked like Su Kuei. Lian was both shocked and pleased to learn that Susie Han was not Su Kuei's son. The police agreed to Lian's request for a paternity test with Susie Han. As they waited for the results, the family was filled with anxiety. When it was confirmed that Susie Han was Li En's biological son, Li En was ecstatic, his joy impossible to hide. Li En's wife had a complicated expression, torn between happiness and concern. Li Niansong appeared haggard, his boyfriend now a brother. He wasn't sure whether this was a blessing or a curse. Susie Han was silent, his face clouded with sadness. Su Kuei's case was now closed, and Han Rue's remains had been moved from the cave in the Su family tomb. Han Rue's parents were devastated, falling seriously ill. Although they had long lost contact with their daughter, they always hoped she was living well elsewhere. To learn that their daughter had been murdered was a heart-wrenching blow. The Li family, having finally avenged Han Rue and cleared the injustice, should have been happy, but the atmosphere was tense and oppressive. Susie Han and Li Niansong felt especially awkward. The two young people, who had been so close to marrying, now found out they were siblings. The revelation was an unbearable torment. When Lian's wife learned the truth, she was shocked. She had noticed her daughter frequently gagging recently, and any discerning person could tell it was a sign of early pregnancy. Seeing her daughter grow increasingly pale and weak, Lian's wife gathered the courage to speak up. For her daughter's happiness, she no longer cared about the consequences. Her daughter's happiness was more important than anything. She called Susie Han and Li Niansong together, arranged them to sit properly, and with a solemn expression, began to tell them a story buried in her heart for many years. Back in their high school days, Li En, Han Rue, and Lian's wife were classmates. Lian's wife and Han Rue were very close friends. Sadly, both of them fell in love with their handsome, kind, and ambitious classmate, Lian. However, Lian was only interested in Han Rue, so Lian's wife had to suppress her unrequited feelings. In 1970, during the height of this Sendown youth movement, Lian's wife stayed in the city as the only daughter in her family, while in 1975, she married Yang Song, a colleague introduced by a mutual acquaintance. At first, their marriage was happy, but things changed when Yang Song found and read a diary where Lian's wife had expressed her feelings for Lian. The jealous Yang Song flew into a rage, scolding Li En and swearing revenge. No matter how Lian's wife tried to explain, Yang Song saw Li En as his rival and enemy. In December 1979, after all the educated youth had returned to the city, Li En, unable to contact Han Rue, went to Lian's wife's house to inquire about Han Rue. Since they had been such close friends, Li En hoped she might know something. Lian's wife had not heard from Han Rue, and seeing Li En's disappointed expression made her feel uneasy. As she escorted Li En out, she tripped and fell. At that time, she was already 5 months pregnant. As she was about to fall, Lian caught her, and her heavy body fell into his arms. By chance, Yang Song returned home just then and saw the two embracing. He went mad and rushed over to beat Li En. Li En dodged and repeatedly tried to explain, but a furious Yang Song didn't listen. Unable to catch Li En, Yang Song grabbed Lian's wife and dragged her to the roadside platform. Yang Song's house was on a high hill with a 3-meter wide road in front of it. Below, there was a busy highway. If they fell, even if they weren't killed, they would be crushed into pieces by the cars. Lian's wife screamed in fear, and Li En dashed forward. In the struggle with Yang Song, Li En gradually gained the upper hand. He pulled Lian's wife to safety, but after several bouts of struggle, Yang Song lost his balance and fell onto the road below, where a speeding truck ran him over. Lian's wife, heartbroken, tried to jump after him, but Lian held her back. Looking at her pale face, Li En shouted, "Yang Song died by accident. You can't let an innocent child die with you. You're a mother. You have to take responsibility." "I can't raise this child alone," Lian's wife cried out. "She'll suffer if she comes into this world. It's better to end it now." "Marry me and raise the child with me," Li En said. "We're both unfortunate people, and you've been good to me. I know that deep down. Since Han Rui and Yang Song abandoned us, let's live together. I'll treat the child as my own." In April 1980, Lian's wife gave birth to a daughter, whom they named Li Niansong in memory of her biological father. When Li Niansong was 4, Lian's wife suffered a miscarriage, which left her unable to bear children again. Both Li En and his wife accepted their fate, feeling it was their punishment for their past mistakes. They were ready to take responsibility for their wrongs. The necklace unraveled a series of past events, and the long-buried grudges resurfaced, bloody and vivid. No matter how long the truth had been hidden, it would eventually come to light. Li Niansong and Su Zihan were not biologically related, and they could continue to interact as before, but neither of them felt at ease. Su Zihan still frequently visited Su Kuei's grave. Despite his adoptive father's grave sins and the fact that he had brought this upon himself, Su Zihan did not harbor a deep hatred for Su Kuei. No matter how others saw it, Su Zihan believed that it was his enemy, Su Kuei, who had raised him, giving him life and, along with it, so much love. For the first time, Li Niansong stood in front of her father's grave. She burned a lot of paper money for him. This small-minded and narrow-hearted man had finally led his life and fate to a dead end. Li Niansong could never resolve the knots in her heart. She secretly rented an apartment and moved out, wandering alone in the empty space every day. She needed complete silence to adjust her mindset. Half a year passed quickly. Su Zihan had already moved in with Li En and his wife. He got along well with Lian's wife, who gave him the maternal love he had lacked, and Su Zihan made her feel the safety and happiness of having an adult son. No one in the Li family pressured Li Niansong. They would occasionally call her but never asked for her specific address or forced her to come home immediately. They just silently cared for her well-being and told her to let them know if she needed anything. Li Niansong was 8 months pregnant now. Her swollen body was starting to become inconvenient, so she called her mother. Not long after, her mother arrived at her doorstep. "It's like this. Given the month of your pregnancy, your father and I were worried you might need help, so we moved into an apartment not far from here. We didn't want to upset you, so we didn't tell you in advance," Lian's wife said, her face flushed, almost as if she were a student caught in a mistake. "Actually, Su Zihan has been secretly following you. He was worried you might be in danger," she added. Li Niansong, tears filling her eyes, reached out her arms to her mother. The two embraced tightly, mother and daughter. She had forgiven her mother. She had forgiven her long before she felt her baby kicking. When her child had used all its strength to kick inside her, she understood what it meant to be a mother. Her mother had selflessly given her life, and what reason did she have not to love and cherish her mother? Li En once again handed the necklace to his son, Su Zihan. "This is a relic left by your mother, and it is also our family's heirloom. You must give it to your wife to wear and pass it on to your children, so that it may bless the descendants of the Li family with health and happiness." Su Zihan took the necklace and solemnly placed it around Li Niansong's neck. Their eyes met, tear-filled and blurry. Su Zihan tightly embraced Li Niansong, and the two of them, tears streaming down their faces, finally opened their hearts to each other.